Hello, and welcome to the Q&A. I do these every single Saturday, and I answer your questions that I find interesting. This is my opportunity to be a geek, so if you don't find any of the stuff here particularly familiar, then feel free to ask in the comments for clarifications. These will just be answers that just pop into my head. There won't be any scripting behind this. Hello everyone, and welcome to the second Q&A on the channel. Just a clarification from last week, because apparently it wasn't that clear to people. These are essentially things where nothing really goes on in the background beyond the paintings that you see, so feel free to Alt-Tab. Anyway, we're going by our confirmation names at the moment, so we're joined by Peter. Say hi.
Hello.
We're joined by Michael, who is actually a woman and Peter's wife. Say hello.
Hi.
Joined by John. Say hi.
Oh, hi. I thought I was gonna go by Simon now.
Okay, so he was Peter, but we mixed them up. We'll call you Simon then.
Simon, Simon. Simon Peter.
Then we've got Augustine. Say hi. Another family man.
Hello.
And then there's me. I'm Ephraim. So we'll start with the very first question, and I think the other three guys will have more to say, and of course the lady will have more to say because they're older than me, about what are the biggest red flags in women from $1 donation. Thank you very much for the question. So I'll input my 2 cents because I don't really have much to say, and then I'll let you four go in turn. So the ones that I've noticed is that if she puts out on the first date, she's not worth it. And you want to avoid women who are very, very much into the left-wing politics because, it's not sustainable. And left-wing politics ultimately promote a attitude of not really being that attached to death. It's very liberal. And do you really want to be building a family with that? No, you don't. So if you guys want to contribute.
For me, I guess I think it's most important that truth is the most important thing. She needs to. Am I supposed to talk about women or men?
Yeah, talk about women.
We're talking specifically about women. I might do another one on men later on, but the question's on women.
Okay. Like I was saying, I think truth needs to be the most important thing to her, and that. I think there's a famous quote by a saint saying that if you're searching for truth, you're searching for God. But truth.
That's nice to hear. Yeah. But it's not necessary. We can't always discern it because us men, we're not exactly that good at reading things. So what sort of outward signs would you say that we could observe in a woman to indicate that she's pursuing truth?
Just that I guess in today's world that you don't just follow the media. You don't get one bias and just run with it. You need to actually care what really happened. See that a lot with politics. Like if someone is a Hillary supporter or even a Trump supporter, if they just watch one news source like Fox or CNN, then watch out.
Yeah, I can imagine that being a pain. So what do you think, Peter?
For outward signs of that, I'd say, if it looks like she's willing to learn, but not because it's you. Like if she's not trying to find things out because she wants to placate you, but she's trying to find things out independently of the man, then that's a good sign that she's self-motivated for truth.
Yeah, that sounds really sensible. That she's actually willing to talk and has some internal motivation to use her intellect, not to impress you, but actually to learn. Even if she's not super well advanced, because probably a lot of guys aren't super well advanced, but that curiosity and willingness to talk, super important.
Yeah, I obviously agree that I think why would you want to be with a woman who didn't desire the truth? Why would you want a woman who purely adapts herself to you even when you're wrong? How could you rely on a woman who, as much as she may love you, right? If she deludes you, then how can you expect to run a family, and how can you expect to act in a way that's rational if she's just going to be a yes woman to you?
Many of those problems seem to stem kind of from men's lack of understanding of their function. If they don't look for a woman who's actually going to function as a mother, right? They haven't come that far themselves, so they don't understand that they can't go for somebody empty-headed who might look good but doesn't have any substance to her.
Yeah, I mean that's been very difficult for me because obviously, as men, we're attracted obviously to looks primarily. We're primarily people who behold things, and it's a lot harder. Perhaps I don't know. I can't speak obviously for women because I'm not one, but I know that it's difficult to override that primal instinct, of just looks. Although obviously, I think one thing that should be mentioned is that, and you guys can obviously add to this, I think she needs to be healthy, right? Like, she may have her heart in the right place when it comes to pursuing truth, but if she's unhealthy, then, like, how do you know she's going to produce healthy children, How do you know that she's going to be there when you need her? And that's, as sad as that is, that needs to be taken into account as well, I think.
Do you mean literally healthy, like physically healthy?
I mean, like, obviously, like, an average woman will be just fine for this, but I mean, if she's got, like, some really, really serious problems...
Severe overweight.
I mean, that's... I think I'd take that as more of an issue because of what sort of mindset feeds into that. But if she's like... I'm trying to think of a good example, like cystic fibrosis...
Well, if she's asthmatic, she might be a Mason.
For goodness sake.
I'm joking.
That's for another Q&A, but I mean more things like, say, cystic fibrosis or something extreme like that. Like, it may not be wise to get married to a woman like that, because as much as she may be, an incredible person, if she's gone by 30, then you're a bit up, proverbial creek without a paddle, aren't you? Like, I'm not speaking specifically about, like, mild problems, like, for example, I've got IBS, and a lot of my family has IBS, and those problems can get in the way a lot, but they don't impact, say, life expectancy particularly. But, like, serious medical problems need to be taken into account as well, I think. Does anyone disagree with that, or agree?
No, but then the only thing is, like, most people kind of probably already assume that you need somebody of that degree of functionality. Functionality might be a crude word to use in that context, but it's very rare.
I understand, but like, I've known men. I mean, it's
willing to look past certain things. And that's not very wise. It definitely isn't.
I mean, I understand it on a level because I mean I've done it before in the past myself. But I mean that's another issue, right? That's another one that you have to be aware of, like severe mental issues, like real personality disorders. Like,
yeah,
you do not want to form a family with a woman with borderline, right? Like I've dealt with them, and I can't imagine being locked up in a house with them. And I felt very deep things for people like that, but I've forced myself to cut them off because I know that if I persist in it, then I'll just be screwing myself and hopefully my future children. Or hopefully, like, I will have future children, but like it will also impact those children as well.
There's definitely some degree of like younger men wanting to save women, but sometimes it's going to be out of your league. If she has severe mental issues, most men are not going to have the capability to save.
So Augustine, were you going to say something, Peter? Or
no, go.
No. I mean Peter, like Peter or Michael, because I saw the mic go.
Piggybacking off of what you guys were saying with the health and going back to the question, I think it's important that the wife, if she or girlfriend, that she desires children. Like, she may be in the first pregnancy and have complications in the birth or the pregnancy and then cannot have more children. I do think it's important that she desires children, and preferably a large family.
Yeah, because I know of people who are married to people who don't want children, and they do, and I can imagine that just rending people apart.
Yeah.
And that's obviously, I mean, aside from all of the feelings, because we're always going to talk a lot about feelings, I suppose, here. Like, on a practical level, that's not good.
Well, yeah, it's heartbreaking to, I mean, the supreme gift of marriage is children. So if she would not desire children, it would be kind of pointless for the marriage, the vocation of marriage.
Hmm. You stay very quiet, Augustine. Have you got anything to add? Like any sort of things to bring up?
Yeah, no, sorry, I was just kind of managing my kids for a second.
No problem, man.
Okay, yeah, so the main thing I wanted to talk about and point out is their relationship with their father. This one is like extremely important, and sometimes you can't really tell, sometimes you can. For instance, I've noticed that even just from like a dating site, Catholic Match, there's a little section that talks about their relationship with their mother and father. If it says mainly raised by their mother or something to that effect, that's like an immediate red flag for me, because this is somebody who is lacking in a proper paternal relationship, and therefore typically, not always, but typically has a broken connection with God, and uh, with their idea of sort of what a husband or father is like. So that one's really important. I know my wife was a Protestant and completely anti-Catholic bigot. But I worked on her, and the only reason I was able, honestly, I believe that I could work on her and that she could see the truth. She has an amazing relationship with her father, and biological father, not stepfather, or anything like that. Um, and yeah, I think that's something really important. I think it's something that is overlooked. But I mean, we talk about it in the sense of daddy issues, but it's serious. It's a serious thing. Your relationship with your father is something extremely important, and if that's broken, you tend to have an issue with God.
Yeah, I've noticed this, but I mean, it needs to be. I think it needs to be sort of clarified a lot more because I think it's at least half of people in general are raised now in environments where they're deprived of their father, either because the father is working or because, like, obviously there's like single motherhood, and it might not always be. I mean, it's obviously not practical to go and seek out all these things, but maybe there needs to. How could we go about, say, dividing between like literal single fatherhood, avoid at all costs kind of territory? And I mean, this. I think we can do this by looking at how it manifests in interpersonal relationships, right? And between, say, father goes out and works and only really sees the kid on the weekends, because a lot of people who say, well, I was raised mainly by my mother, like I was raised mainly by my mother because my father was always in the city working. I think there needs to be a distinguishing there.
Yeah, I think Father Ripperger kind of goes into this on occasion, and I've heard him say he gets everything from the saints. He says this, so this isn't just Chad Ripperger, making up whatever. But yeah, Father Ripperger often says that for children that are sadly deprived of a full-time father figure, uh, whether it's from death or necessity, or abuse or something to that effect, God provides with grace the necessary. God provides the necessary graces that child be raised properly. Is basically what he says. We know that the norm is, a two-parent household, but if something happens that's sort of outside of the reach of the children, or even the parents themselves, if it's just something broken, like a medical issue or whatever, then that can be um, a big grace that God provides them, and it is difficult to discern. But honestly, being able to speak to the Father or being able to speak about familial issues without there sort of being a roadblock, I think is like a decent indicator. Um, but I've spoken to women who are like, oh yeah, I I I hate my dad or whatever. Like my stepdad's cool. He gives me a bunch of money. That's a red flag. Like,
Oh yes.
Who talk
you know,
about a
You know, she,
Semaphore, big red
you know,
flag.
she could be complete. She could be a Francisco Franco type Catholic rad tread, and then if she says something like that, it's a wrap. It's over.
I literally
There's
know a
like,
woman like that. I know a woman
yeah,
who's really, really into like Francisco Franco, Antonio Salazar, and stuff. Like she's memorized the songs,
yeah,
and she had a really poor relationship with her father, and it shows in her behavior.
yeah. I mean, it's almost like the what's it called? The egotistical wounds that you can sort of manifest from that manifest greatly from homosexuality, etc., etc. You can see these wounds from fatherhood that they kind of start peering through a little bit. So you just it's something to pay attention to. It's not something to hunt down. But when the time comes around, when you have to, you come up with the conversation, hey, I'd like to ask your father, to court you or your hand in marriage or whatever. That's what I did.
Hopefully before then, just talk about
Yeah,
family
yeah,
relation.
yeah, yeah. But if there's a roadblock or if there's like a, no, I hate him, I don't even talk to him, I'd be like, oh, okay,
I
so
mean, like, oh, go ahead.
I love that you brought this up. I actually come from a very broken family. My mother is on her fifth husband. And I would say that growing up, it gave me a desire to know God even more. And if you can imagine growing up with a mother who's been married so many times, how she treated men and how men treated her, and what was modeled for me um, on how to treat men, it was just to throw them away. And that wasn't anything I ever did. And in fact, my first boyfriend is my husband now. And I just think that you're totally right. It's the father issues, the daddy issues are really important when trying to find a wife.
Yeah, the trouble is that they're so like because of the collapse of traditional Christianity in the West. Though it's such a it's like diffusing a bomb. There's so many people out there who are like that and who have these narcissistic wounds. I've heard them called, like, obviously you've called them egotistical wounds, Augustine.
yeah,
They,
narcissistic friends. Yeah,
yeah, they need to be taken into account and avoided because they're so present. They're omnipresent to the point where I don't know if anybody. I go to a university in the UK, and you see these everywhere. I've been in bars before, and women have come up to me and they're like after like a few pleasantries, they're telling me their bloody life story and about how their daddy hit them and stuff, and it's like, oh my goodness gracious, I feel bad for you, but I certainly wouldn't indulge you any further. So,
It would be rare that somebody who wasn't actively and conscientiously Christian, having gone through a very rough upbringing, because that's only the situation where your wounds can be healed by something that actually makes it good. But it would still be very hard
and
to
actually,
be.
yeah, actually, going off of this, I was reading through the Book of Proverbs. I've been doing this for quite a while because it's a very useful book. And King Solomon talks about women who forsake the covenant of their father. And initially, I thought, well, they're rebelling against their father, and that's one thing. And yeah, that's a bad thing. We just discussed that. But it also means those women who were raised Christian and forsook it. Like you want to stay away from
That's scary.
women who have just dropped Christianity either because they found it too difficult or because I don't know, for somehow Richard Dawkins convinced them or something.
So my sensation is that many people now raised by boomer parents, the boomer father has had like a mentality that kids don't need to be raised somehow. And so like that father image of like this completely whatever goes attitude doesn't sit well with Christianity. And so if that's the model that they've been raised under, Christianity is going to seem like a tyrannical system to them.
One thing I do have to make clear though is that I think when a woman who has like maybe huge problems with her father genuinely seeks out the covenant and lives the covenant that's provided by Christ and by Moses, I think that's. I mean, obviously there'll be issues down the line, but if she's actually striving for a holy life, I think that's a good sign.
No Jewish women. No, I'm just kidding. No, okay, but seriously, that is, that kind of touched on what I was mentioning before, which is, God provides the grace. So, even if a woman, just like Michael was saying, she had issues with her mother, and multiple stepfathers or her mother's husbands or whatever, she would like to address them as, but God provided the grace for her to see and seek the proper role and relationship of men and a husband and a father in a family. And, as Jesus would say, blessed are you, Peter, because this was revealed to you. It wasn't, something that you could figure out on your own. So, and the same thing goes with all of these things, hopefully, that we bring up can be overcome through a Christian understanding, but it should just simply be noted at first. And before you move on from just introducing yourself to a courting attitude, these things should be noted and should be spoken about or resolved.
Yeah, it might take a long time to resolve everything, but for example, one thing that really gave me a lot of motivation to continue to talk to the person who's now my wife, to talk to Michael, and eventually to ask her to marry me and then to marry her, is that she constantly was seeking to improve and improving in everything, and she's overtaken me as far as spirituality has gone, for sure. But if at any point there'd been like any backsliding or any anything like that, then that wouldn't have been so much a red flag as a red line. Like if somebody is just moving because you're asking them to move rather than moving because they actually believe in seeking God, then you'll notice that they often go back to their old ways, just out of forgetting to put up the facade for you.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move on to the next question. We spent about 20 minutes discussing this. Okay, so the second question is actually from Peter here. What is one easy thing almost anyone could do this week to advance the kingdom of heaven? So I suppose it's only fair that Peter, considering it's his question, would give an answer.
Yeah, well, I intended this question to be anything beyond the obligations. I've been thinking about it, and it's really the question of what one easy thing is. I think if you're doing all the obligations, the next thing that you can do is go to confession, even if you haven't committed a mortal sin. If you have anything at all, that like any venial sins, any imperfections, go to confession about it.
Yeah, I've been very lazy on that. And that's something that I know helps as well. So what I would say to everyone is that they should look into mental prayer. So they should look. There's a book called The Ways of Mental Prayer by Lahodi. That Lehodey, and we've been going through it on the server that we're currently on, and I've been reading it as well. And it basically gives you a route into meditating on the scriptures properly, and into advancing up into higher levels of prayer. And ultimately, the point of this is that prayer is raising your intellect up to God. So the more you raise your intellect up to God, and the more sophisticated and the more developed you get into it, the holier the person you will be, and therefore the less sins you will commit. So, what do you think, then, Simon P?
This is hard. I think both of those suggestions are great. One thing I've been trying or wanting to do is charity, and it's something that comes a bit unnatural and it's a bit hard to me. But charity has a lot of potential.
Heaven knows what I'm like. If anybody watches the videos on my channel in the week, they'll know what I'm like.
Charity is not easy, and I don't even know how I can always practice it in the day-to-day, because like in the West, at least where I'm at, there's not that many people like in immediate need of life-saving charity that you can just like throw yourself at and say I'll help you. But figuring out how you can actually be charitable.
I mean, one thing I'm doing, and this actually came to me in mental prayer, I realised that about half of the people at my student parish were foreign students from Spanish-speaking countries. So I figured, well, if I get to perhaps a conversational level of Spanish, then as they are very new to England, it may be, bring a little bit of a burden off of them so they can actually talk to people and learn more of the language. Because as much as the ESL programs, the English as a Foreign Language programs, make people reasonably proficient at English, they're not always the best. I know that I'm going to be living with a woman from Uruguay who, while she can speak conversational English pretty well, she's not the greatest at it. So perhaps being able to speak Spanish would not only make that person feel more comfortable, but also help them to develop a higher level of fluency in English. Okay, so the final question is, what's your lifting routine? So I have mucked around in gyms for about 2.5 years now, and machines are useless, so I use Starting Strength by Mark Ripperto. Don't bother with the chart that you find online. Go and buy the actual book. But I've heard that Augustine has a rather hot take on this.
Oh yeah, okay. I guess we can start with mine. So this is going to be less so of a structured lifting schedule, but being completely sincere and honest, having a big family. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is because I have 5 children. I'm on my 5th right now. And these kids still like to get picked up, and they are not getting any lighter. So with the consistent carrying of children, as well as home improvement work, moving in, building dressers and shelves, and doing yard work, gardening, and taking care of everything around here is an immense amount of manual labor if you actually put your heart and soul into this. Now,
big dad bod.
This has given me strength training, right? This isn't building a physique. So this, if you're looking for a physique, I think that's vain, anyways. But this is true strength training.
Who knew the real dad bod was being able to deadlift your kids?
We might have to separate that. Like the dad bod is like the secular version of the father or the patriarch body.
Like there's the dad bod and then there's the patriarch bod.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, quite frequently, my wife being pregnant, she starts to have hip issues and she can't walk from the couch to the bed. So I'll have to carry her, and you have to be able to do that. There's nothing worse than not being able to pick up your wife at any stage of her life. So, yeah, that's my hot take: is have a family, and if you do it properly, you'll be strong.
Peter was saying something about this earlier on,
I don't do any exercise apart from picking up my children and tidying and building things and moving things, because things can't just stay where they are when you live with a woman.
Oof.
I can concur.
Yeah, but as for those single men, the one thing I've noticed is that even if you ignore what I said with starting strength, at the very least, do barbell practice, and at the very least, look up 2 exercises. You wanna look into the overhead press, which is sometimes called the press, and you want to look into low bar squats, because those are the ones that contribute the most to overall body strength. I'm not sure if you agree with me, Pete. You've probably got more experience than me because you're older than me, and you can also deadlift more than I can.
Big credentials right there. Yeah, barbell training is really good. Now, the reason why barbell training isn't really promoted, or why a lot of people might be ignorant about it is, well, first off, if you're doing other things that are good for you, like other sports, that's kind of fine. But if people are trying to get into strength training and they're going to the gym, they see what is at the gym, you're going to see machines. And like this is going to be for the people who have tried going to the gym a few times and have been misled by the machines. The machines are not good for you. And what that kind of means is that the gym doesn't put those there for you to really benefit from them. Those are there because it's easy for them. Now, yeah, you might want. Are you want to go into more details on this?
I was going to say, like, I spent a good 2 years of the 2.5 years I spent in the gym mucking around with the machines, and while it did exhaust me, which was the primary intent of going there, because it was like, I'm like a dynamo, like I've got loads of energy. It didn't build any sort of muscle. All it did was sort of ruin my joints. But the moment I started doing overhead pressing, chin-ups and pull-ups, bench press and stuff like that, I immediately noticed a physical change that just didn't occur with the machines.
You might unironically gain more general strength from the type of work that was described earlier, just being a father, having a house, doing stuff in the home, because that's a full body systemic activation of your body, whereas the machines are isolation. And there are certain things that isolation can be good for. Bodybuilders will use them, in order to really get the pump at the end of the workout, for example. And there are people who have the experience to use them correctly. Unironically, though, they seem simple, but they're kind of not the most useful for the real people coming into the gym for the first time, because you're not going to have those years of experience to know exactly when to use that one isolation movement. Most of the time, you want to work out your entire body in ways that are kind of, I would use the word functional, but people are going to misunderstand that. But you want to work your entire body. You want to work out in a complete way. And the way you do that is with the big movements. That's a simplified picture. But starting strength from Mark Ripito paints that picture, and it is a good picture. Right? You want to do the big exercise if you're going to go to the gym. The gym is one way of working out. Right? If you're going to do sports, you can build, like, doing sports, especially sports that require like sprinting. Like if it's a more explosive stuff, you're going to build a good physique from that. Like people shouldn't be throwing classical things as just doing sport under the bus. No. Going to the gym is a simple thing you can do as one guy. That's why a lot of people like doing it, because it is accessible. Now, for a Catholic trying to avoid thoughtery, you might be running into near occasions of sin going to the gym, but going and doing barbell exercises are one of the most straightforward ways that you can practice building your strength, not just on your own body, because say calisthenics are good, and there's a lot of function in working out with your own body weight, but sometimes a lot of the work you're going to be doing is you moving other things, not just your own body, and the barbell is probably the safest and best way to get into exercising power or strength versus an external object. And so barbell training is really, really good, and you want to start learning how to do barbell training. Now that might seem like, oh, that's not a specific answer, but it kind of has to be not very specific, because if you're just looking for a workout routine, it's not necessarily going to be helpful just to get the specific. You need to kind of learn the general ins and out of how to actually work out with a barbell. It's not super complicated, but it's a bit of a learning thing.
Yeah, it took me a couple of sessions to learn how to, like with a personal trainer, to learn how to properly deadlift a back squat and bench. I mean, bench is pretty straightforward, although I often used to forget that you put your feet under your ankles first, and contort your back a little bit. Yeah, like these things take training, but it's actually useful, unlike the machines where you just sit down and you work the muscles, and all it does is ruin your wrists. Deadlift the back squats.
So one of the things I wanted to point out, now I know I had a hot take, but this one's even hotter. No, I'm just kidding. But I do agree with Simon, called Peter, but a couple things I wanted to touch on just in brief. Using free weights as opposed to machines, there's a huge difference, and the main difference is that when you're using free weights, you are actually using a small, these tiny little muscles. They're called stabilizer muscles. And this is what happens when you can, bench using machine. You can bench 300 on like some bench machine, but as soon as you, pick up your Olympic bar and throw some 45s on the ends, you can't do it. It's your hands start shaking, and you start doing all this weird stuff, and your body's it literally starts shaking. It's because your stabilizer muscles aren't there. That's the good thing that free weights help with. Second thing that I wanted to point out is I did read a book. You can get this book on Amazon. I really enjoyed it, and it gave me a huge outlook on a new way to sort of look at lifting instead of. I'm in the military, and I have guys who are like, "Oh, we got to do this Navy SEAL program. It's 14 weeks, and we do like this." I mean, everybody's so different. You can't really, these things don't work for everybody. But this book, it's called The New Rules of Lifting, and 6 basic moves for maximum muscle. Now, it sounds cheesy, but when you open up the book, it's awesome. And basically, what he describes is that there's 6 different things that you do that are what you would call what did you call it, Simon? It's
Barbell training?
No, actual body movement.
Oh,
Like, you're not-
I was gonna say functional, but that has a lot of baggage to it. In the people who talk about this or that functional, you have CrossFit guys talking about functionality when they're squatting on top of a rolling ball or something. It's like, yeah, that's kind of
that's not functional. Yeah. So the 6 basic movements that it talks about is squat, deadlift, lunge, push, pull, and twist. Now, all those 6 things you would do in the wild. If you're trying to survive out in the woods, running away from whatever bears and stuff. Those are all the things that you would do. You'd push, you'd pull, you'd lift yourself up onto things. You would, squat down and pick up whatever you needed to. It's very loose in the sense where it just talks about useful techniques. And so it's not structured. It's not going to tell you, hey, do this, do this, do this. It's just going to say, hey, these are the good things to do. And you yourself can formulate sort of what's going to be good for you. And then towards the back, it talks about decent eating habits, and it talks about healthy forms of fat and energy and stuff like that. So I highly recommend the book.
There's actually
Can I just do some summary before you move on to?
Actually, I was going to add another book on nutrition.
Okay.
There's one book that I found pretty useful called Deep Nutrition. Go read it. It's a long book, though. I will say that.
Yeah. So a lot of programs are derivatives of older. What a surprise that things are derivative of older things. But starting strength is a classic, which is of course based on things that were before then. But there are certain just core things to a generally good strength program, which includes those big exercises. But one rule of thumb, so people aren't getting misconceptions, you work out to get strong, and if you're overweight, you diet to lose weight. Just if people are misunderstanding that, if they're looking for weight loss routines, that's primarily not what you do when you try to become strong. It's going to help, and you're going to be healthier and all those things, but kind of rule of thumb is that to lose weight, you diet, and to become strong, you work out.
Yeah. So I was told that Michael had something to add for women, because I have no idea what women really do in the gym. I'm more focused on pushing large things.
They should do it.
Well, first women do the laundry, and we do the. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I will say that for the past 6 years, as a mother, I have been pregnant or breastfeeding. So my workout, and if you can do this as a mother, breastfeed, it's the best thing you can do. But also after, postpartum, give yourself a bit of grace, getting back to working out and taking care of a child in your family. And just commit to something small, like 10 minutes. And maybe if you get going for 10 minutes, you'll want to go 15 or 20. And to get more specific, what I personally do is Chi Rho, and she does pop Pilates. So it's really upbeat music, and she's positive. She smiles at you.
Is it like one of those tapes?
It's one of those what?
Like the tapes that you or like a DVD that you put on?
No. I don't do that. It's YouTube.
Ah,
A new video every week. So if you get bored of something, there's something new for you. And
okay.
sorry, what?
Yeah, okay, yeah. I was just like, yeah, sure.
Yes, do just commit to something small, and maybe that will grow. And just grace. If you don't get it done every day, just that's enough. You're a mother, back in the kitchen and clean.
The last thing I wanted to point out, going back to that book, the New Rules of Lifting, they talk about this notion that you need to cut down on your caloric intake in order to lose weight. Now, one of the things that he sort of posits in this book is that this is the reason why when people stop doing that, they rebound and gain all that weight back. And so I think he offers up a pretty decent solution, which is, yes, obviously you need to work out, you need to expend more calories than you're intaking. But the best way to expend the most amount of calories isn't getting on a treadmill. Because as soon as you hop off the treadmill, and he cites studies, and it's a very brief book, but it's packed full of stuff. He cites studies, and he basically says when you get off of a treadmill, if you're trying to lose weight, your metabolism, you burning energy immediately stops. It stops like right away. The one thing that continues on burning calories hours after you're done working out is what? Lifting. So big muscle group lifting, such as squats, will actually make you lose weight faster than just hopping on a treadmill and eating salads for 2 weeks.
Also, if you're not a horrible American living in a place where you can't get anywhere on a bicycle, biking to daily mass is a good way of losing a few calories here.
Yeah, and he actually says biking.
But burgers don't have that luxury because everything is like car distance.
All right. But he does mention biking. He offers biking instead of running, using a bike in the gym and cranking up the tension, and doing this and cycling in high tension and then low tension for a minute or two and then high tension for a couple minutes. I mean, to the point where it's painful, will actually increase the amount of time that you are burning calories after you hop off of the bike. So it helped me out a lot. It helped me lose weight and do really well while I was deployed in the Navy on a ship. So it's really, as you can imagine, it's very difficult to lift weights on a ship that's rocking back and forth. It's nigh impossible. So in order to stay healthy on board that, besides doing the day-to-day stuff, that book saved my life out there.
I'd also say if you can afford it, even for things that you would normally use the bus or the car rather than a bike, if you get yourself a cargo bike, especially a non-electric one, and always have it on like high gears, then that's a pretty good workout. Even going to the shops is suddenly a workout then if you've got a cargo bike.
Or just walk up hills.
Racing home from daily mass, such good workout.
Anyway, I think we've gone on for quite long. Like the last Q&A was 25 minutes. This is looking to be about 45. So we'll bring it to a close. Thanks everyone for coming on. Does anyone have any last things to say?
Yeah, should we end with a prayer, Ephraim?
Sure. So, are you going to say it, Pete or Peter?
Well, it's your channel, so I thought that you would.
Okay. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
Hallowed be thy name.
Thy kingdom come.
Thy kingdom come.
Done, on earth
Thy will be
as
done
it is in heaven.
on earth as it is in heaven.
Give us this day our daily bread.
Give us this day our daily bread.
And forgive us our trespasses.
And forgive us our trespasses.
As we forgive those who trespass
As we
against
forgive
us.
those who trespass against us.
And yet lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
But deliver us from.
Amen.
Amen.
I'd like to thank the people on the Renaissance Man program who you'll see on screen. They've helped me so much over the last couple of months, and hopefully they've received good and satisfactory content from the Renaissance Man program, which you can find in the description of the video. Thank you very much for watching.